to the Rest Day with Jack Haig. I just finished up a really nice chat with Harry Sweeny from EF. He also did the Vuelta a España, and we had a really good discussion talking about EF, their plans before the Vuelta, what the goals were going into the race, how the race was for Harry and EF. And then we talk a little bit about his Stage 21 TT performance where he was 9th. A few discussions about his YouTube channel, which I discovered whilst researching for this podcast. I would highly recommend giving it a little looking into. And then we discuss a little bit more about the sponsorship model in cycling, actually, which was a bit of an unplanned tangent, but a super interesting conversation talking about cycling and the way that the sponsorship model works and just some ideas that we had around it. Now, for me personally, I'd planned to record an episode on Sunday, the final day of the Vuelta, with Torsten and my teammates, like the previous rest day podcast that I did, but fatigue got in the way. Not much was happening on Sunday other than just going from A to B in the time trial. I was incredibly tired, and majority of my team were as well, so they weren't really up to doing a podcast. But since the Vuelta finished, I caught the train home to Andorra from Madrid on Monday. And then I've pretty much just been hanging out at home. I haven't really done a whole lot. Today is Thursday. I went for the first ride since Vuelta. I did a 2-hour ride on my e-mountain bike. Went around the Val Nord Pal mountain bike park, and I've got severe arm pump and sore hands because it's been a long time since I rode my mountain bike. But it was nice to get out there and do a bit of electrically assisted cycling because after Vuelta, the idea of cycling under my own power doesn't really seem that interesting. Now, what I have coming up is the World Championships in Zurich. I'll go there and represent Australia. And then I potentially have the Italian one-day classics afterwards, but that's to be confirmed probably after the World Championships. I'll probably do a week and a half, 2 weeks of training now leading into World Championships. Not a whole lot of work needs to be done after such a high load and deep fatigue from Vuelta. I'll probably do a total of 4 or 5 hard training sessions, and mostly it's about trying to recover and get a bit of energy back into the body and enjoy some time with the family. To be honest, I've spent quite a long time away this year, and it's been a pretty heavy block of training camps and racing with the altitude camp before Dauphiné, Tour, San Sebastian, and Vuelta. So I'm just enjoying a little bit of time home with my son, going to the pump track and sort of hanging out also with my wife, Anna. So that's about all that's been going on for me. Also, really appreciate everyone chipping in on the Discord channel and putting in some questions throughout this year's Vuelta. I hope to continue keeping that community alive. So always keep your eye out for the Discord channel, and I'll always post in there when I'm recording a new episode and who I'm recording it with, and you guys can put in some specific questions. All right, guys, enjoy this episode. I think it's actually a really good one. So leave some feedback on Discord or hit me up on Instagram and the Escape Collective. Thanks again, guys. Cheers. Harry Sweeny, welcome to the Rest Day with Jack Haig. How's it going?
Pretty good, actually. I'm having a bit more of a rest day now after the Vuelta, so pleasure to be here.
You actually came here on your bike, which I was surprised with because you've done quite a bit more riding than I have, which was about an hour and a half e-mountain bike ride today. What'd you do?
I'm on for 3 hours today. I've actually asked to do Luxembourg as well. Going to have a crack at GC there, so
that's pretty soon.
Yeah, it is. I leave on Monday or Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, right. And then you don't do Worlds, right?
No.
Yeah.
No Worlds.
Quickly, before we jump into the Vuelta, are you from Warwick?
I am from Warwick. I was born in Warwick, and then we moved to the Sunshine Coast, and then I spent like 17 years in Brisbane.
This is going to be a real niche Aussie conversation for a second. Bear with us, but my old man's actually from Warwick.
Oh, shit.
And I've been there a couple of times.
Really?
There's not much going on there, bro.
No. I went to visit it. I think I did it at Warwick to some one day race in Brizzy.
Yeah.
And I went to see the hospital there. And it's like a mental institute, like bars on the windows. And
so you didn't actually live there for very long?
I was like one. I think I lived there for a year. So I was like one.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I saw that on your pro cycling stuff, I was like, there's really not much going on there.
No. I never really spent time there. Thank God.
All right. I wanted to catch up with you to talk about the Vuelta. I obviously did a couple other episodes with some of my teammates in Torsten.
Yeah.
And we covered the first and the second week. And I had planned to do one with Torsten on the Sunday where we had the time trial, stage 21, but I was rather fatigued. I didn't really get around to it. How was the Vuelta for you in general?
Hard. I mean, I went in pretty underdone, to be honest. I broke up with my missus the day before the Vuelta. So I'd gone in I think I did 5 hours in 10 days before the Vuelta. So I went to San Sebastian, DNF, had a horrible time, came back, we broke up, and then I went to the Vuelta. So I was in bits. So the first week I just crept. I was going super shit. I think the first day, that sprint day, I got dropped by 100 guys on a berg, and I was like, this is going to be a terrible Vuelta. Then every day I started getting better and better and better. First rest day I came good, and then the last 2 weeks were really good for me. But it was the first time helping GC guy out for trying to win a grand tour, or even any tour. And I have to say it was pretty enjoyable.
Because I was going to ask you, you've done 3 grand tours. You've done 2 Vueltas and 1 Tour de France.
Yeah.
But 1 Vuelta, you didn't start stage 11?
Yeah, I got COVID. So I did the tour my first year pro with Lotto.
But first, how'd you end up doing the tour the first year pro?
I joined the team as a lead out for Caleb. So I'd signed in the year before, and they signed me for the lead out because I saw I had good numbers. And then a few weeks later, I won Lombardia. And then they're like, maybe there's a bit more there.
Lombardia under 23?
Yeah, under 23. Yeah. So then my first year pro, I did a bunch of classics, got COVID, and I missed the Giro, which I was supposed to go to. And then Caleb, we were out training one day, and he got this idea imagine if you did the tour your first year pro. And then overnight, I got added to the long list for the tour. And then the boss of the team, John Lalong, at the time, he was things didn't really work out with Steph Crass when we first sent him to the tour. So if we send you to the tour and it doesn't work out, you're never going to do the tour again with this team. Wow. And then he put me on my program was I did Dauphiné. Then I went from Dauphiné overnight to Belgium, had a 1 day rest. Then I did Tour of Belgium, then 1 week off, and then the tour started. So I'd already done 17 race days or something by the time the tour started. And his reasoning was, if you can get through that, you'll get through the tour. So he basically gave me a choice. He was you can say no, but if you say yes and it goes bad, it's it's on you.
Yeah, right.
And I just was lifetime achievement. So I just did it.
That sounds like a bit of a messed up way of thinking about it.
Yeah, no, it was.
How did the Vuelta compare to the tour?
I think numbers wise, I think every year every Grand Tour gets harder and harder. But I think numbers-wise, the Vuelta was definitely harder, but I think mentally the Tour is harder, but also in a way easier because you have so much hype before the start. To me, every day at the Tour, I was can't fucking wait for this.
Because we were talking about it in the team, and some of my teammates who hadn't done very many Grand Tours were asking whether this year's Vuelta was the hardest Grand Tour.
Of the year or ever?
Just that I'd experienced.
Okay, yeah.
I think I've done 13 or 14 Grand Tours.
Yeah.
And I said that this year's Vuelta was probably the most consistently hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Where every day you clocked on.
Yeah.
And it was hard at some point for quite a long period of time.
Yeah.
And then if you were trying to do any kind of GC, there were so many hilltop finishes or mountains close to the finish that you went full. Whereas in the Tour, you have more extremely hard days. Yeah. But then you have the transition stages between where it's 200 kilometers and it's kind of hard for the last 30K.
Yeah, you actually switch off.
Yeah.
No, I think the same. There was days where we raced for an hour and a half at the start. And I think the reason why is because it was so open.
Yeah.
There was also the controlling team Ajit was just like, when it started, it was like God's plan today. Like whoever gets in the break gets in the break. And I think that made it crazy hard. Like I think if you took out the first hour, they wouldn't have been as hard.
But I also think that it's changing because we had a similar thing in the Tour de France, even though it was way more dominant this year, that when everyone in the peloton knew that it was a like quote unquote breakaway day, then it was just like full retard for breakaway. Full. And you race for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then like it would go. But then in the Tour, when it was like a sprint stage, and then everyone kind of knew like, well, it's 100% a sprint. Literally no one went in the breakaway.
Yeah.
When I think now it was just the way that the route was designed for Vuelta, and then also, like you said, having AG2R as the GC team leading, that led to just every day everyone was so desperate to get in the breakaway because they knew that it was probably going to go to the line.
Yeah.
And then you had all these guys like between 10th and 30th on GC that are like, I can get 5 minutes for quote unquote free.
Yeah.
And you got all these other guys that are like, I can win a stage.
Yeah.
So then it's just crazy for an hour and a half before we start doing a normal race. EF, what were the goals going into Vuelta?
The goal was to win, actually. So we went into it so Richie went into the Tour for GC until Swiss. He crashed, got sick. He almost didn't ride the whole week before the Tour. Yeah. So he went into that to just get better, basically. So from the start of the Tour, and I didn't make the squad, I got a message from JV and he was like, we want to try and win the Vuelta. Mm-hmm. So then we were like, the whole preparation was for that. And then, from the beginning, it was like, no breakaways. We're not doing anything else. It was like, only this. And the first week, actually, with Richie, like, I think he came in, he always gets better, but he wasn't really up to scratch the first week because he lost sort of like 30 seconds each day, 40 seconds each day. And the director, Juanma, he was just like, oh, we have a plan. And then eventually it was the day before Sierra and he was like, this is what we're doing tomorrow. And I think everyone, like, we knew Richie was good, but like to actually, you can have that plan and you could try 10 times and only execute it once. And that was the once that he did it. And we were all like, chapeau,
To put in context, this stage, there was a breakaway with like 3 minutes up the road.
Yeah.
He was in the GC group and then he launched from the GC group on a climb with like 80 kilometers to go on the stage. Yeah. Bridged across like a 3-minute gap. Yeah. And you guys had someone waiting there to help him bridge across, I'm pretty sure.
We had 2 guys waiting there.
And that was actually probably one of the more impressive performances of the Vuelta that probably didn't really get noticed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, we finished the day and I think it didn't get noticed because he didn't win the day.
Yeah.
Had he won, it was like, it would have been incredible. You know?
But you haven't really raced with Richie. I looked at pro cycling stats.
I've almost not raced with him. I did Flesh, I think, and Liège were the only races I did. But those were my jobbers. Like, Liège was like Richie first wheel with Ben into the bottom of La Redoute. So it was still like a high pressure scenario. And then, to come in here was like, I didn't really know what to expect with him, really.
So you didn't really know him at all before?
Oh, we did Sierra Nevada camp to get ready for the Tour. Yeah. But I mean, it's not really. I would say I didn't really know him, no.
In Lotto Soudal or Lotto Destiny now, you didn't really have any South American riders?
No. I think they have 3 nationalities on there. It's Jared Drisner's 1 Australian and some Dutch and Belgian, so not really.
What's it like working with South Americans? Because you also have Cepeda, who's at Vuelta. And am I missing someone else you have?
We had Rigo, and he crashed out real early. I would say it's really good. It's incredibly relaxed, as you would expect. I think it's a different way of working, like they just sort of go with the flow. What happens, happens, but it's always a good vibe. I think the number one takeaway from them is that they're always just happy to be there, which makes things special.
I really enjoy working with Santiago Buitrago as well. Yeah. And it's a similar thing that like there's never really that much stress, but like they're generally pretty professional. They generally know where they have to be at a certain moment, but there's never like this real urgency or stress around anything. No. And it just makes it a much nicer experience.
Yeah, I think with Rigo, he's a bit like that as well, like I tried a few times to like bring him into position, and he just sits at the back, no stress, man, I'll get there when I get there. And you're like, okay. Like
I enjoy working with him. come back to the Welter. One of the big talking points at the beginning was the heat in the first week. Now, I spoke a little bit about the heat protocol stuff that Bahrain was doing with Torsten in the previous episode. Did you guys do anything interesting or different or special for the heat?
Well, I'd been doing heat already for like the whole month leading up to the tour.
Heat training.
Yeah. So I'd been like in Sierra, then training here, middle of the day, real down low. Then I was doing hot baths every day. And then I didn't make the tour. I had like a couple of weeks off and then I started again straight away. So like every day after training, like 30 or 40 minutes in a 42-degree bath and like up to your neck and just sit in there and like suffer. And I did that every day until San Seb, then came back and then did it 2 more days and then we went off there. And honestly, I didn't find the heat too bad. So I think it really works.
Okay, because I also asked my teammates whether they'd done any heat prep and whether they thought it had worked or not. And some of them said that they weren't sure if it had made a difference.
What was the protocol?
So I think Torsten had done some heat training on the ergo. So with like lots of clothes, rain jackets, etc. And then Camel had done the heat baths similar to you, but maybe he didn't do them long enough. And then also he's not like a climber, so he's going to suffer regardless.
I think with the ergo, I think the mental cost for the gain is the ratio is way off, whereas I think the bath is a little bit more even. Like the bath is still one of the worst things you can do because you sweat, but like you're already wet, you can't cool down. Yeah. So I feel like it's over faster and like when you hop out, you have like an endorphin rush a little bit. But I think when you do the ergo, it's just every day like wears you down mentally. So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Did you need to change your training with the hot baths? Because you do it a lot by the sounds of it, like every day.
No, I didn't change anything. That's the benefit, I guess, is because you do your training and like when you get home, you still switch off, but then you just like you have your meal or you wait a bit and then just hop straight in and like, I just like watch YouTube or something in there and just relax.
Yeah, because I did quite a bit of sauna work as well.
Yeah.
And I do it similar where I do it normally like after dinner when my son's gone to sleep. I use the sauna then and then I do like 30 minutes in the sauna at like 80, 85 degrees. And it's kind of enough. Rest day activities during a Grand Tour. What do you get up to? What did you do this time? What have you done previously? What's worked? What hasn't?
First Grand Tour, the first day, I did 2 hours and I did 2 by 2 minutes, like real hard VO2 efforts. Then the next rest day of the tour, I did no bike because I had saddle sores and I had the worst day of my life the next day. This Grand Tour, we did 2 hours both days. And the second rest day was like pissing rain. So we went out 2 hours in the rain, which was pretty grim. But I had no bad days, so I was happy.
Do you think that's because of what you did in the rest day, or you think that's just because you've gotten a little bit older, a little bit more confident in yourself?
I think it's because of what I did on the rest day. I think it makes a huge difference for me, like getting out and going through the process. Because even when I'm just training and I have a day off, I feel rubbish the next day. So I think it's just a matter of like mentally actually being able to be like, all right, I have to ride today.
We actually did a similar thing on the second rest day when it was raining. We had like half the guys did erg. Yeah. And then 3 of us went outside and we did an hour 45 or something like this. And then I just did like some light medio on a climb and that was it. And then the first rest day I did no intervals, just 2 hours would be easy.
Yeah. I think it's the time that matters more than anything, to be honest.
Yeah. Just getting out and doing the process, putting the kit on, getting a bit of a sweat, doing this. Chef and food. You have a chef with EF, right?
Yeah, we have a few. We have Owen Blandy was a chef that we had. He's a baker. So fresh sourdough every day, sourdough pancakes in the morning.
Wow.
But honestly, like I think it's important to keep you eating because that's the biggest problem I've had in Grand Tours is that I just feel sick of eating. I'm like, I don't really want to. So yeah, he's been really good.
Now you don't have a kitchen truck which you eat inside.
No, but we just have a kitchen truck. Yeah.
But the kitchen truck's just for the chef when he cooks, and then you guys eat in the hotel.
Yeah.
Now, in Bahrain, we have a kitchen truck where the chef cooks in and we also eat in the kitchen truck. Do you think there's a disadvantage of eating in the hotel? And do you think that there's a benefit for the teams like Movistar, Ineos, us, that have a kitchen truck dedicated for eating inside?
Yeah, for sure, because you can just go to the same place, sit in the same seat every day. It's like home. and you can have a nice coffee machine in there. So I think I would prefer it. I mean, Oatly bought the team a La Marzocco for like as a present, but it's just too heavy to bring around. So yeah, I mean, a kitchen truck that you can eat in be pretty good, I think.
No, it is nice. And whenever people ask me about it, I always say that it's definitely a luxury, and it's kind of that thing that you add on when you've got like $500,000 left over from the team budget and you're like, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
Kitchen truck's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And in Bahrain, we're sponsored by Rocket, and we have a Rocket machine in there.
Nice.
It's pretty good. But the old Lavazza coffee beans don't really do it justice,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I'm sure.
Now, last week of the Welter, how did it go for you personally? And then what were the conversations you had on the second rest day? Because Richie was fourth, right?
Yeah.
In GC going into the last week.
Well, he was third. And then he got overtaken on like one of those like real obscure days. He lost the wheel, I think, on a descent or over the top, and Mass took 10 seconds on him, and then he slipped back down. But I think that was before the first race. Oh,
yeah.
No, it must have been in between.
I think it was in the middle week.
Yeah. The last week for me was my best week. Like even up to the last day was my best day on the bike that I had so far.
Because I'm going to get to this last day of TT because it was pretty impressive.
No, before that, I mean. Like stage 20 was my best day of the Vuelta. Like I did the best numbers I've ever done. I think that day I did an hour at 4:10, like mid-stage. And then I think I had 370 normalized for 5 hours that day.
Jesus.
And that was like, we had nobody left. Like I was in front of Richie and my wheel. And every climb I looked back, there was like one less guy. And then it just got to the point where it was like me and Richie, and then Lander attacked, and I like sprinted, get Richie on the wheel, and then just blew up.
I actually do remember chatting to you in the neutral of stage 20, and your plan was also to get as many guys in the breakaway as possible.
Yeah, zero in the breakaway.
Yeah. It wasn't very enjoyable in the breakaway. No. But yeah, to start off with, we had the Lagos de Cavadonga day.
Oh, yeah. Tough day.
How'd you guys approach it? Because you guys don't have like a team that's full of climbers like you were talking about.
No, I mean, we had Rigo, and yeah, he's really probably what would have been the best. Then we have Costa, but he's sort of like a bit more in between. And then...
But he also...
crashed out. So two of them crashed out. And Cepeda, I mean, on his day, he's really great. I think it was hard to manage our expectations, because we couldn't bet on it. And I was, in the last week, probably climbing the best of everyone but Richie. So it was also hard because I'm like 76 kilos or something. You can't just be like Cavadonga, like you have to be there at the end. So like I could have a good day and be there, or I could have a bad day and not be there. So we were sort of like umming and ahhing. But then in the end, most days I just stayed with Richie in my wheel and just led him over everything until I couldn't anymore. And that was basically all we could do.
I'm going to come to this later because we have a question on Discord talking about the way EF changes the strategy. But you guys always do a pretty good job of getting guys in the break.
Yeah, so this Vuelta, we didn't put anybody in the breakaway apart from the days that we had to. It wasn't like we were wasting energy, because we essentially couldn't. We had already two guys down. So the days that we did were the days that we were like, these are the action days, and that was it pretty much. Because
you guys, a tactic that not only did you use in Vuelta, but something that EF does pretty well throughout the seasons, is have a tactic where someone will wait for someone from the peloton to join someone in the breakaway.
Yeah.
And you guys did it maybe like 3 times or something during this
Vuelta.
Yeah,
well, we did it the other day that essentially the second time that we did it was the day that Lander lost 4 minutes.
And
that day, Richie could have got on the podium, apart from the fact that when the road was blocked at the bottom of one of the climbs, a rider from Ajaccio jumped, and I was on the front, and I didn't jump on his wheel. And he was the one that waited for Benno on top and did an all-out sprint to get him back into Richie's wheel. And when we look back on that day, that was the day that he would have lost 3 minutes and he could have been on the podium. But then you get into like what could have been, what could have been. But yeah, that was like, one small change and it could have been like all over. So
yeah, that was stage 18 actually.
yeah.
Because I remember stage 17 was the day we went to Santander in the rain.
Yeah.
That was filthy hard, and I don't think it came across on TV of how hard that was.
Nah.
And then I remember stage 18 to Victoria, and I was creeping that day. I was on a real bad day.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know if it was you told me or someone else told me that you were going to light it up on this climb for Richie.
I think I told you. I told a few guys because I told Caden as well, I think, because I knew that he would want to know. Because usually if he knows the tactics and he was like umming and ahhing what he was going to do, it would change what he would do. And in the end, it helped having more strong guys in the break. So, yeah, it was
proper hard.
Yeah.
It was proper hard. I think even Pavel Sivakov might have told me he did like one of his best ever 10-minute powers on that climb. And it wasn't even at the finish. Like we still had like 30K to go at the top or 20K to go at the top. But yeah, that was a super good tactic by you guys there. Stage 21, the last day of Welter. You were 9th in the TT, bro.
I did. I had a good day, actually. It was sort of like the day before I went all in for Richie, like as long as I could. And yeah, I said I did 4:10 for an hour. And I was thinking that night, I was like, maybe I should have a crack at this TT tomorrow. Anyway, we had like 1 or 2 beers and I went to sleep like 2 a.m. And I woke up and there was no recon plan for me. It was like Richie goes and does it himself. So I was like, I'll come and do the recon. I'll see how I feel. Felt rubbish in the recon. Then TJ was with me in the car back from recon. He was like telling me all my pacing plan and stuff. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go hard, man. And like, I was sort of like umming the whole time. And then in the end, I hopped on the trainer basically and I didn't do any warm up. I just rolled my legs over. I took 300 milligrams of caffeine and I just like rolled off the ramp and just whacked it. And it was the best I've ever felt in the TT. Like I felt calm and like really good. So
I actually have this theory that I reckon like majority of us way overdo warm-ups.
Yeah, I agree with this because I've never rolled off the ramp in a TT I wanted to do well and my legs haven't like seized up because there's like already lactic acid in my legs. So I think like just rolling it over is like it's all you need.
Yeah, because sometimes you see guys on the erg just like going max in the warm-up and you're like, if you were going to go do a 20-minute test in training, would you go max like 10 minutes before it?
No. So this is my new theory is I'm going to try this in Luxembourg. Just no warm-up really, just like 20 minutes, spin the legs.
Yeah. Maybe a few little like neuromuscular little sprints or something like this.
I don't do that. I do like a low cadence, like just like 300 watts, like 40 RPM and just like grind it over.
Activation style.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good day to finish.
Have you ever done any aero testing or anything for your TT? Or was this just like a one-off thing? You've never really put any importance on a TT and you're just like, I'm just going to go for it.
I reckon I've done 2 decent TTs in my life. One was the last TT in the tour. I was top 20. I think I was like 17th. And then I did like, this is funny. I went to do aero testing with Lotto one year. We spent like an hour and a half, laps around the track, everything. We've like tested skin suits, helmets, like positions, saddle up, saddle down, get to the end and I'm like feeling my tire. I had a slow leak the whole time. All the data's ruined. And that was the only time I ever did it. And I was like, why am I bothering? Because I also had a really hard body shape. Like I got super long torso and short legs. So until the UCI rule change came in, I was like really stuck with how far I could go out. And this is the first year that I have like actually good TT equipment. And yeah, I mean, it was the first time I rode my TT bike since Paris-Nice.
Yeah, right.
Like we did Paris-Nice team time trial and we were 3rd. And then I didn't ride it until the opening TT in the Vuelta.
Yeah.
And then I rode it again for that. And I was like, maybe I should like keep going.
Put a bit more effort in this. Do you use I don't know the name of the model, but the POC, like the
Tempor.
The spaceship looking one.
Yeah. It fits me perfectly. Like it's, because I think it really depends on your head position and whether you look down or look up. But if I really like have someone in the car telling me head down, it's like perfect, like flat across my back.
But you did no testing to decide whether that was it other than just the eyeball test?
We did on camp a 3D scan. So every rider that was new was 3D scanned with each helmet and then they determined it in a computer simulation. But I mean, it's not really real life, but
Yeah.
it's close enough to guess, I guess.
Yeah, and then the error eyeball.
Yeah.
Now, maybe to move on a little bit from the welter, you used to live in France.
I did.
Now, how long have you been living in Andorra?
A year and a half now I've been here.
How did that move come about? How was living in France? Do you like Andorra better?
Yeah, I mean, I moved to everywhere I've moved, I'd never been before. So when I first turned pro, I moved to Nice. I'd never been there. I hopped in the car with Caleb from training camp and he just dropped me off in Nice. And I was like, well, this is my home now. And I lived there for 3 years. I did a year in Nice and then 2 years I lived like on the border with Monaco, like just above in Beausoleil.
Like in
and I'd sort of been like, when I was signed an extension after the tour, I was sort of like umming and ahhing like what I wanted to do because I sort of wanted to like really find a place to stay for my whole career. And I was looking at whether I wanted to like move to Monaco, but then it was a bit of a stretch and I didn't really like it there that much. And yeah, then I was like, one day I woke up and I was like, I'm just going to move to Andorra. So I called up Doug and I was like, Doug, I want to move to Andorra. And then within a week I was here and like had all my stuff done basically. And the only time I'd been here was that stage that the tour came here. I'd been we stayed in Bordes for the rest of the day. I never went into town. I never saw Andorra and I was like, oh, it's okay. And then, I moved here and I love it. Like best place I've ever lived.
So much better than France.
Yeah, I feel really at home and it's like super peaceful here. The lifestyle, like outdoors, like hiking, skiing, mountain biking, it's like suits me to a T. So
nice. Well, that's a nice move then. And also like it makes it way easier with residency and
for sure.
visas and
yeah, I mean, I just didn't want to stress about that anymore. I was like, I'm pro now. What am I doing? Like renewing a 1 year like holiday visa in France every year. I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my wife the other day that I've been a resident in Andorra since my first year pro and how much easier it has made like my life up until this point 100%. Now. And just also committing to more or less only living in one place.
Yeah, this is the thing for me as I like see neo pros now doing like 2 places and you're just like, why?
Yeah, but even it gets worse, like especially when you start talking about like British, Australian or American not so much, but British and Australian, you see guys that do like a little bit Girona, a little bit Andorra, and then also go back home to Australia. And you're like, you're literally never anywhere.
Yeah. And then they're also, when they come up here, they're like, I'll get a place at altitude in Bordeaux because it'll be so good. And then they never spend a time. Like,
Anyway, there's another topic to talk about. But you see in Andorra, we can talk about this for a long time. I asked the listeners to put in any questions into the Discord channel. And I had a couple of people write in. One of them was actually about the article you did for Escape Collective a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I think it was,
And they were just asking if anything had changed since you'd published that article. How many people like reached out to you? What was the feedback? And did you like change your approach or anything?
I got like hundreds of messages and comments that were like, this has like changed my life, which was actually like crazy to read. I mean, like statistically, it's almost impossible you don't know someone that's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't know anyone. And then like it turned out it was me. So I was like, I see it as like, since I found out and like learned more about myself, I was like, this has the ability to like really influence how I go about my future. Like learning in how to interact with people, like get less frustrated with people is like really important for me. And also like how to keep my head screwed on racing, because I think like I look back and I spent so long in my career just like going through the motions without actually being in control of like what's happening in my head. And yeah, since that article, like heaps of people I think it's touched. And yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a few more in the peloton that would help as well. But yeah, it's been, I think it's been helpful for people, yeah.
Because a few people have asked me about sports therapy.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few sports therapists, but I've never really found them very useful. But I actually saw just a regular therapist that has nothing to do with sport.
Yeah.
For similar to you, where like I probably have a little bit of ADHD as well as a little bit on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I guess I hadn't really become comfortable with accepting and acknowledging those things.
Yeah.
And this person really helped me. And then it also helped me in sport as well. But it was like someone that was not even related to cycling or sport at all.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. I mean, I feel like you go to a sports psych and they're so focused on your performance because they think that's their job. But like actually you go to see a sports psych to like get your head on straight in your day-to-day life more. So like for me at least, and like when that's in order, then everything on the bike is great.
Yeah, and it just helped me change or accept the way that I thought about things as that's the way that I think about it, but it's not the way that everyone thinks about it.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Like just to be like, you are probably a little bit different.
Yeah.
And like you are going to get frustrated with a lot of people just because to you it doesn't make any sense, but a majority of people, that's what they feel and think. And that kind of helped a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's like in day-to-day life, I'm just like, look, people don't care about what you care about. Like, just let it go.
Just being a lot more comfortable with who you are.
Yeah,
and that you're different. Another person was asking, this has been a bit paraphrased, but EF seem to be really good at pivoting from their plan A to a secondary goal in a Grand Tour and still finding success, unlike some other teams like Ineos, for example, which sometimes fade into the background if their main goal fails. What do you think makes EF so good at adapting to new strategies when things don't go to plan? And do you even think that statement's true?
I do think that it's true to a degree. I think, say, the wheels fell off on the GC at the end of the Vuelta, we would have been in that boat where there was no success, so to speak. But I think in general, honestly, I think it has to do with the culture. I think it has to do with the fact that we have so many people from so many different walks of life that there's always something going on, always new ideas. Like we have directors from everywhere in the world. And I think that they all bring like bits of their career into it. And there's always like fresh energy in the team. So during the Vuelta, for example, we had the two main directors stayed on, but the second director swapped I think we had 4 second directors come in.
What?
So there's always, TJ got there like the last week of the race. And then in my ear, I have a new director. I have like TJ saying like, put your fucking head down. Like in the radio, you know? And it's like, you have something new to like stimulate your mind. And I think that definitely helps.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. I never really heard of directors changing, but I guess it kind of makes sense because it can get a bit mundane after a while, especially after 3 weeks of the same person, the same strategy, the same way of thinking, the same conversations you have on the radio.
Yeah. I think though you can't really change as much the first director because that you need to have like a consistent goal. Yeah, you have to have a pillar. But then having new people come in, I think it's refreshing.
How's TJ this is also a bit of an off-topic conversation, but how's TJ, like ex-pro, obviously achieved a lot in his career and now as sports director?
Yeah, well, I haven't actually done a race with him apart from having him in the radio on the TT because before that he was only in the breakaway in car 2. But on the TT it was awesome. Like everything was like what I would want to hear. You know, like when it starts to get really hard, he tells you like real things. Like for example, he'll say, this is a shit part of the course. Like this is where you make the time and really motivate you to dig deep there. And then when it's like downhill, it's like, all right, stop pedaling. Like just relax for 1 second. And sometimes that's like all that I need is like someone to reassure me that the strategy works instead of going like half as hard on the uphill and then trying to still pedal on the downhill and you still lose time. So it was really, really good with that.
Yeah, I think sometimes having a ex-professional, but someone that hasn't been out of the peloton too long. I think as soon as you're out of the peloton too long, you lose that touch or that ability to give you self-confidence.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas guys that are just recently retired still understand it, like what TJ was explaining to you during the time trial. One more thing I wanted to touch on was you have a YouTube channel. I came across it while I was doing some Googling to research this, and we spoke about it briefly before recording this podcast. How's it going?
It goes well. I mean, like I started it. I went to Isola one time for a solo altitude camp, had nothing else to do, and I came up with this idea of like, I sit in hotel rooms and do nothing. So I was like, I want to do something probably the same as like you. And I started it and then like it got traction and people love it, man. Like people love to see real stuff and like actually what your life is like. Because teams, I think there's maybe one or two teams that don't fall in this category, but they just like put out this really polished look where like everything's great. We had a tough race today, but life's good. But you don't actually see like bad stuff happening. You don't see the hard stuff where you're like groveling in training. You don't see like day to day. And I think people really enjoy that insight and actually being able to like reach someone, you know?
You are right in thinking that this was a similar concept to why I started a podcast, but you took it a bit next level because doing a podcast is way easier than filming, editing, publishing. Like, it's actually kind of hard to do video.
Yeah, no, video is really hard, but this is also one of the things is like I went down the rabbit hole and really enjoy like learning about like computers and cameras and all that sort of tech stuff. But I think like I went so far into it that I was like, I need to make everything polished. And those videos obviously did really well. But then there's some videos where like Jacob's holding the dad, like a handy cam, and like people love that just as much. So I've sort of like tried to back it off so it's a bit more sustainable. But yeah, I think that aspect of it's really fun, but it also, you need time. And is at the point where like, if I really wanted to push it, I could probably like get someone to do video full time and someone to edit full time, and it wouldn't lose money, but it wouldn't make money at the moment, but it would probably really blow up then. Because I think like consistency on YouTube is like really rewarded, but it just depends like what you want to spend your time doing.
Did you get any pushback from the team or anyone inside the team?
They love it. The EF really, really love it. And I mean, the channel gets more views than the EF channel does, I think, apart from Lockie Morton stuff. But yeah, they really love it. And I mean, I've done a little bit for them. Like the day before Liège, we went round to all the camper vans and did a tour of that. And I think they have a similar concept with Race TV, but because of sponsors, they're a bit limited to like what is like acceptable code of conduct in a video, whereas mine sort of like it's a bit more raw, you know. But no, I think they really enjoy it, and all the sponsors of the team always love it as well. Like they ask for me to do stuff for them, so yeah, I mean, it's just another way of adding value to me as a rider as well, I guess.
I think EF, the team and the philosophy behind the team is the perfect team to fit vlog style video in there.
Yeah.
With the vlog style video, like you were saying, I think that a lot of the times people misinterpret why we exist as a sport.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, we're just entertainment. And sometimes I think we get caught up in like, yes, high performance and performance is really important, but the way that the sponsorship model works in cycling is that it's not a revenue generating sport. At the end of the day, it's just an eyeball brand awareness.
Yeah, people get so caught up in this, and you see teams like Ineos like, we're too serious to do this, and like how can people be doing videos and stuff and like wasting their time on it? But like you're selling essentially the ads when people are watching the tour. Like that is all that we're doing, and doing things like this is no different than that. And to the sponsors, it also is no different to them as well. Like it doesn't matter to a sponsor whether people see them on YouTube or see them on the TV during a race. So it's a bit like, I think cycling has a long way to go in this aspect.
And I also think that it really depends on the team that you ride for, because like you mentioned, they're Ineos, but the reason they're Ineos is in cycling is because I think Jim Radcliffe, who owns Ineos, is a fan of cycling.
Yeah.
And like Ineos doesn't really sell anything, or like anything that's really tangible for the general public.
No.
Whereas you riding for EF, that it's a tangible thing that's a brand awareness, and then you have Oatly and like these other big companies.
Yeah.
So
I think though you're right to a degree. I think Ineos is selling they're not selling a product, they're selling what they want their image to be. They want their image to be associated with sport, not a petroleum company. And that's like, they need people to see them still for that. So whether they're selling anything or not, they're selling their reputation.
Yeah. I think I'm always really interested in and intrigued by the business side of sport and just business in general. And I'd actually like to try and eventually talk to more people around the sponsorship model in cycling and how it works. And part of me sometimes wonders, like, is it more beneficial for a team or even an individual rider to try and focus on being as popular as possible or as high performing as possible? But then both kind of go together. That if you're like Tadej Pogacar,
Yeah.
You're both winning Tour de France, but you're also really popular because you win Tour de France. But then you can go the other way and you have guys like Rigo.
Oh, man.
Like we spoke briefly about him during Vuelta, but like, okay, he was a really, really good cyclist, but he's out of control popular and has like all of this extra stuff outside of him, the cyclist. And I've always been curious with his contracts because he always rides in his Go Rigo clothing, not the EF clothing.
Honestly, I don't know about it. Like, I think Rigo's a case where he's done both, but I think the secondary part has only been enabled by being a good rider. Like, you only become popular when you are a good rider and a good personality. And yeah, like Rigo is just an extreme case where like he's done incredibly well with everything that he does. And oh man, if you've seen the fans outside the bus after these stages, it's just incredible. Like you can't hear anything. You can't even get to the bus after some stages.
Yeah, the Colombian and South Americans are pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But on this, like how you said that his like off-bike stuff got enabled by him being very good at cycling. I found myself during the Olympics, during like swimming or like some sport that I don't really get exposed to very much, just like Googling or Instagram searching an athlete.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of these athletes in these sports that I perceive as not being very popular, having like massive fan base following. And I'm like, cycling is really popular. Why aren't more people?
I don't know. I think it's not as worldwide as we perceive. Like a lot of people ride and a lot of people watch the tour, but I don't know if it's as global as like swimming, for example, or I don't think people can relate to it as much. And I think that's why these people have such a following. And also because in swimming, you'll get like 5 athletes make the Olympics and that's the biggest part. So those guys obviously get like so much more attention than the 900 pro cyclists of the world.
Yeah. I find this really interesting, and we can talk about it probably for a long time, but to finish with this, I wanted to say like, I've always found cycling the weirdest sport because in what other sport are there so many people participating in it, but with so little interest in the professional side of it?
Yeah.
Like, it blows my mind that like, I always compare it to football or even like anything where like people that play football in the park recreationally, they want to wear Real Madrid, FC Barcelona. And like, even though they have no aspirations of turning professional, but in cycling, we have so many people that are recreational cyclists that have zero interest, like literally zero interest, but they'll spend 12 grand on a bike. They'll spend 3 grand on clothing, helmet, and this kind of stuff, but with zero interest in the professional side of the sport, even though they're heavily invested in cycling.
You know, I saw a really interesting article on this. It was that they did a survey of Brits who thought there was, I think like half of all Brits thought that given 4 years, they could make the Olympics in a sport. So I think cycling was up there as, I think it was like 25% of the men that were interviewed thought that in 4 years, they could go from nothing to being in the Olympic team in road cycling. And I think that the cycling is like such a lifestyle sport, but I think when people actually do it, they're like, this is way too hard to actually do pro. And I think there's the divide there because people like going to the cafe culture, but I think it's less tangible for them.
Yeah. And I got 2 topics I want to touch on this. One is that you have the influencer cyclist, like the cafe culture that you just mentioned now, which I think is also a massive business side of cycling that I think we don't realize how much money's in that side of and how much importance brands put on this social media side of it. And then 2, I sometimes think cycling doesn't do a very good job of translating how fast and how hard the professional side of it is through the TV. For example, my wife came in the team car on the stage 21 of Tour de France when I did the time trial from Monaco to Nice. And she was like, but how do you go so fast down like down the mountain? Like, it's so scary. And like, I wasn't really pushing it. And like, she's quite involved in cycling through me, but like even she doesn't really realize until you're put in the car behind an athlete, you're like, holy shit.
I 100% agree because, you know, you see like these renowned like Twitter experts on cycling and the Netflix Unchained came out. And I remember reading people like just watched it and they're doing their review and they're like, so sensationalized, like how can they publish this? But like every writer I've talked to, they're like, this is the best job they've ever done at showing how chaotic it is. Like these people that watch on TV see like the helicopter shot of us all going like straight down the road and you're like, it's nothing like what being in the bunch is like. It's guys screaming, like guys decking it off the edge. Like I watched Netflix Unchained and I was like, finally people actually can see how chaotic it was. But then these people were just like, oh, sensationalized rubbish. And you're like, it's not really. Like, this is how bad it is.
Yeah. And all right, last thing on this, but like I think when people are like, oh, the tour must be so hard. I always say, yeah, no, like it's physically hard, but also like training camp at altitude or something, or like is also super physically hard. But the thing that makes the tour so hard is everything that happens from 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. when you wake up until 10 p.m. when you go to sleep. There's so much like stimulation and like fanfare and excitement and everything that goes around the tour and all like the pressure, the riders in the peloton during Tour de France taking all these extra risks, like you're saying, like everyone being super close to each other, all the fans, the people, the color, the noise, the transfers, like all this kind of stuff is what makes the tour so hard.
Yeah, there's no switching off like the Vuelta, you know?
Yeah.
The Vuelta, you wake up at like 10, you go to the stage in the bus, you switch on when you sign on, and then like after the stage, hop on the bus and it's like all over, whereas the tour is just like stress, sponsors, everything. So yeah, I mean, the numbers show that it's not harder. It's just mentally there's so much going on.
But yeah, so I want to make the point about you saying that the Netflix series was like sensationalized, but like all that like fast paced, like cutting of the edit and the noise and the music and like this, it's actually what it's like.
Yeah. Like, I also saw someone say like, they're just sensationalizing it with crashes, and you're like, not really. Like you see guys slap off like at least once every 5 minutes there. So
the tour is ridiculous. It's just the extra pressure and the speed and the road furniture and everything. Like that's actually something nice about Vuelta. There's less road furniture.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, in the Vuelta, I think was like after we went through Granada with like all the slippery roads, I think it was some of the safest descending I've ever done in the bunch because people were just like terrified of sliding out.
I agree. The Vuelta seemed pretty safe. We didn't really have any really big crashes.
No. But I'd say it's good.
All right, Harry. That was pretty interesting. We touched lots of different topics.
Absolutely.
It's almost 50 minutes, so we've done well.
Very well.
Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It was good fun.
Enjoy your ride home, and maybe we'll try and do this again sometime.
I reckon. Sounds good.